Okay, so recording. Uh, I'm uh, I'm Brian Haig. I'm your I guess learner assistant, and basically we're going to kind of go through a quick review of everything that we've learned in React so far. Typically, this will last about an hour or two. So far, I've got requests for style components, so we're going to kind of show a little bit of that in as we're doing it. So we're not going to use any straight CSS or anything. We're just going to build it directly with style components. So what I'll do first, though, is I'll give you an introduction to React. So typically this will only take about 5 minutes and try to connect what we learned last week into what we're learning now, which isn't much, but there is some there. Typically what you'll find is on a basic React structure, without any other frameworks, libraries, or anything else, is a public folder and a source folder, along with your package JSON. There's a README file, the lock file, which is gigantoenormous. But what we're really interested in is underneath the public and then the index.html file. So the index.html file is basically where everything starts, just like last week. So if we take a quick look at all this, most of this just has like a bunch of comments and stuff like that. But this right here, this div ID root, is where all the magic happens in this file. So if you notice, we have like a title of React app. The title of React app is up here. You'll notice that we have a favicon, which is up here on the tab as well. That's not really listed out explicitly. Usually it's up here somewhere. Like here we go. So link rel icon. This is where your favicon will live, or where it's connected to the document. And then this div ID root. So this div ID root is, if I inspect this, let me make that a little bigger. If I take a look right here, we have literally everything in this HTML file. So we've got our doc type HTML, language is English. Everything there is there. You got a script tag, but just ignore that. We have a head. There's a character set of UTF-8. Icon is favicon, viewport, theme, color, description, just like you see in here, because it is literally this. So we get down to this div ID root, and you'll start to see where the React app comes in. So if we go into our body and our div ID root, and we start opening this up, we'll notice we have a div class app and an app header and things like that. So, if I go in here and I change this, so like, say, I don't know, oops, I just deleted the whole thing and I save this, effectively, it just kind of crashes the application, and well, it's unhappy, really unhappy. It doesn't have a base HTML file to do anything with. So if we add in some stuff like a new HTML template, and we do something like we'll do Rick and Morty again, always my favorite. And I save this. So now it says Rick and Morty at the top. You can even see it's kind of like the same thing. Nobody uses Edge, but whatever. I'm just going to go get rid of it. There we go. So I need to save it. Come on. So now we've got UTF-8, there's a viewport, so we can do responsive HTML or responsive CSS. Title of Rick and Morty, some scripts and styles that come with this whole thing, and an empty body. So that React app is not there anymore. So what we could do is just do a div of root right here and save it, and it should just come back. So just like that, we have a our React app rebuilt. But what if I'm picky and I don't want an ID of root? I want a class of container, for an example. I save this. It's still going to basically crash. Nothing's going to be here. The div class container is still in the template that we're going to be trying to mount our React application to, but we haven't been able to mount it to this because it's looking for an ID of root. So if I go out of my public folder into my source folder, and I just look for my index.js file, you'll notice that it's trying to render our app onto a document get element by ID root. So will get element by ID get me a class of container? Somebody come off mute.
No, it won't.
Okay. What's a good one for me to use if I wanted to get a class?
We want document.query selector.
Okay. So let's do a query selector. And then we just want a class of container in here, I suppose. So now if I save this, it should bring everything back up and running, right? Okay. Looks like that's sort of kind of working. I can see it rendering here and the app is back there. So this gets us back over into, well, where does this app come from? So this app right here is just calling a function called app that's located in this file. So if you look at your imports and exports, your import app, this, when it doesn't have like a curly bracket around it, if it has a curly bracket around it, it means that it's just an export. If it's just app like this, then that means that it's a default export. So this right here, we're going to have to go into the current directory that we're in and into the app.js file. I am going to rename mine JSX because I'm like that. And all the JS versus JSX does is it allows me to type JSX a little bit easier in the return. So if I'm doing a lot of HTML looking stuff, then I want to be able to basically tap complete a little bit easier without having to type a lot. I'd prefer not getting carpal tunnel. Thank you very much. So I typically will use a JSX, but you can use a JS if you want. My preference is JSX. So if I look at this app.js, I don't really want a spinning logo. I don't really want any CSS. I may still go back in and clean up the index file. I really don't need any of this stuff in here, but you know, if I just save this, you'll notice that we have this div class name equals app, and we have a div class equals app. So what this has done in here, I'll just save it. Looks like there was a little thing there. What this has done here is this is rendered app onto our document query selector container. So React has done its magic. It has changed JSX into stuff that the browser can understand, and it has rendered exactly one div onto our DOM. That's a lot of boilerplate just for one div. We could have easily just done that last week with DOM manipulation, and it would have been over with. But and then a couple of weeks before that, we could have just done that in HTML and not have to worry about any of this. Where it becomes more powerful is when we actually want to do something inside of this and start making things change. And I'm going to show you a good way of making this where it's going to have some change. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to get rid of my CSS because I'm not going to be using it, because we're going to do this all in style components. So currently I don't have style components installed. I'm going to start with style components and we're going to continue to use style components throughout the project because why not? And let's see here. So I don't need this app CSS either. I'm just going to get rid of it because it's just making things ugly. Index CSS. Yeah. I'm not going to do any tests on this one. All these files, I don't need a logo anymore. Well, that's probably in there, but I'm going to go ahead and get rid of it. The report webvitals.js. So going to crash it temporarily. Says, hey, there's not anything in index.js. And that's this report web vitals thing here. So I'm just going to get rid of that. I actually don't really need to technically run React in strict mode. I just need to render app. So it's just trying to get rid of all the other junk that's in there that isn't really necessary for us to do on this specific project. You might want it for other things. Same thing, like, you know, I've got this logo 192. I don't really need that. 512 manifest JSON. I'm going to keep the robots text. Yeah.
So I hopped in just a little bit late.
You're
Are
fine.
we working independently, or do you have a solution branch that you're pushing to?
Oh, we're not going to do any. This isn't really technically a code along. I mean, if you wanted to, you could go and do a create React app. So basically, if you open up a new folder and run npx create -react -app space period, it's going to create a new React app. And effectively, I'm just more or less right now just giving a tour of all of the junk that comes with create React app. And so far I've rewritten the HTML file. So it's just a basic HTML file with nothing else in it. And kind of tried to get rid of all the other junk that I'm really not gonna use. So yeah, so robots text and favicon icon, I'm just gonna keep those because I can. In the source folder so far, I just have index and app. So I don't need any test files or CSS or anything else. And then in root, we still have our README file package, package lock and get ignore file. So the get ignore was built from the Create React app. Technically everything else in here was as well. So if I want to install style components, what I can do is I can actually just look in our dependencies and see if we see styled components in here, which I don't. Instead of me just going straight to the command line and start installing stuff, what I might do is to check out just a Google search for npm styled components. You can tell I've done this a few times. So I'll just click on style components npm. So this is the npm.js website. This is sort of kind of where you're getting all of your stuff whenever you do an npm install. And so you can see the install directions here. It's npm I style -components. And I can click on that and just copy it. That way I don't make any typos, because like a long time ago, like they had one where you could do npm I bootstrap, for an example. Well, there was one called bootstrap. It's a typo, and it would install a virus on your system. So that is one of the vectors that I try to avoid, and why I go to npm. And instead of just, you know, randomly typing things in, I'll usually just copy it from here. And if you're working on like a company might have their own repo, and pretty much you won't have that problem because they only install the stuff that you need in that repo. but that's for like larger companies and somebody who actually has time to do that. But if you're just doing this off of like a public repo, like what comes with Node, I usually just go to npmjs.com, figure out what package I want to do, make sure it's what I want. This one's got 4 million weekly downloads, so I'm pretty sure this is the right one. It doesn't have 27 downloads because somebody accidentally mistyped styled components. And effectively, all I need to do is I need to stop my server. So by doing that on Mac and PC, just hit Control-C. Also works on Linux. I saw a cat limp by out of my window. Weird. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to paste in npmi style dash components like this and hit enter. And this might take a little while because I'm on a really slow computer right now. And the internet's really slow. Okay, so if it says, okay, added 13 packages, did a whole bunch of stuff, 6 high security vulnerabilities. I'm not really worried about the vulnerabilities right at this moment. It's not super important to what we're doing. We're just trying to make something work. And you'll notice right after the R's, we have S, style components, version 5.3.5. So if I save this, we now have access to style components, and all I need to do is do npm start. I can type, and this should run create React app again over here in a minute. Close that one and refresh this one. All right, cool. So we're back to the empty div class app. No happy, spinning icon or anything else like what we had before. So let's just go ahead and just put in something in here so we can at least tell we're on the home page. So there we've got home. Sounds great. So what if we wanted to turn this div into a style component? So what you might do is you can just kind of like go through here, and it's going to say, hey, we have this this styled button. They have other things as well, like let me see, they have documents on their webpage. We're just going to go to styledcomponents.com. So like, for instance, this one is an anchor tag because they have styled.a, and it's going to be equal to a button. And where is their documentation? Right there. Basics. So we've done the installation, getting started. They're wanting you to just kind of start typing it out, but I'm so used to importing things. That's weird. I wish that they would tell you to import first.
I think that's why I asked, because I was like thinking about that too.
Yeah, so that's really weird that they wouldn't say something as simple as import styled from styled components. So let's try this right quick. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to make a new variable, and we're going to call this, I don't know, main. We're going to set this equal to style.main, and we're going to use backticks. So the backticks are the equivalent of you saying, hey, this is a function. So this whole thing is returning something that can be run, so its own little component. Inside of here, we could do, we'll say red. We've got a color of red, whatever's in our main component. So if we wanted to change this div over to the caps lock button to main and close it here, see if it crashes the system. No, it has not. So if you notice, this is now, well, red. Let's see here. Everything's zoomed in but this. Let's say 100%. We'll make it a little tall, bigger than that, 150%. So all I did was change the text color of home to red. And then let's say that we did background color of gray. I think I spelled that right. Yeah, so now we've got some really, really hard to see home, I guess, right? Also really ugly. We can make it even uglier. Use corn silk. And now it's got that weird yellowy color with red. Ew, it's horrible. We could also take off, so like if we inspect this and go to our styles, you can see we're taking up the whole width. Yeah, maybe we'll go ahead and just make sure it's width of 100%. I'm just going to explicitly tell it to be width of 100% because why not? As for our body, I can't do anything with the body right now, but I think the body is has a thing on it. This is where you'd probably want like some sort of a reset or something that gets rid of this, and that might be in a CSS file. But so going back to why this is working, so I've kind of given an example of the syntax behind it. So this is the equivalent of me saying a new component named main is going to have these styles. And when I inspect that inside of the body, let me drop this down. It's actually called main. This style.main is actually creating a new element called main. It looks like my Zoom is going to cancel in about 10 minutes. If the Zoom quits, it's going to be the same link, just FYI. So this style.main is creating a new element called main that has these styles applied to it. And if you notice how it has this class of, we have no idea what this is, and then app, it is creating this class structure so that it doesn't have to put the styles in line. So it's not saying style, color red, background color, corn silk, and width of 100%. It's hiding it inside of a CSS file, which is probably in head. Yeah, here we go. So here's your styles up here. And it's saying IAMMI. Yeah, so it's doing color red, background color, corn silk, and width 100%. And I have no idea what the SCH whatever is. Maybe it's specific to this style sheet. Who knows? But yeah, that's effectively all that it is creating a new component called main. And then we can call it, and then it's going to render whatever that's inside of it with this specific properties. Hopefully I didn't scare anybody off on style components.
But since it's a component, you can pass it around?
Yep.
Nice.
Will this be on the sprint challenge?
I believe that you are supposed to be doing some sort of styling, but I don't remember if it's it's exactly style components or not. And I don't think you need to do more than like one or two. We would prefer it if you did like a lot of styling, spend some time, make yourself proud of it, that kind of stuff. But I don't think that it's anything like, oh, well, it needs to match this design or else. It's nothing like that. It's more like a pretty good suggestion, because with styling, yeah, there's tons of YouTube videos out there on how to style stuff. Configuring style components, pretty simple. It's mostly memorizing the pattern that you see more than pushing an understanding of, how does this work? But yeah, it's just a new component called main in this case.
Brian, why in the browser it shows the class name like all these weird letters, not
Because it's computer generated. I'd hate to say it's AI, but it's not. It's just a random character generator. Or it might be hashed. Who knows? I don't know.
Can you make a theme for everything?
Yeah, you can make a theme. All of that was that you would have to figure out a way of having these in like individual files and exporting them. So like if you had a main, a header, and a footer, those would be inside of a separate file. And for you to have a different theme, you would just modify, or you copy that file and modify it as needed. And then you would just switch between files as you wanted. So that's getting into some pretty deep style components territory. But yeah, it's definitely themable.
And you would just write it the same way in a different file and import, export, and then copy, paste type deal?
Yeah,
Oh, nice.
exactly the way that you would do any other component.
Oh, cool.
Can you do an example of
Yeah,
it?
sure. So
Yeah.
like, let's say we have a new folder. We're going to do components. Oh, and also, if you ever run into a file folder and it's capitalized and you feel like lowercasing it after you've gone through GitHub, don't do it. Bad things happen. And I'll say, let's say style components, right? And we'll just call this mytheme.js. And so if I just kind of cut this, no, I'm going to cut it out of here. And paste it here. So what this is doing is this is going to import styled from styled components in the theme. And then it's going to have this here. So we're going to do an export default main here because I'm just going to do one example of this. If you wanted to do a non-default export, then I guess we could go into that as well. But we've got an export default main. So this should be able to be imported into this app.jsx as import main from current directory, components, style components, and then my theme. So if I save this, we still should have this as the main class. And if you notice, it's also changed whatever this was. So I guess it's not a hash. I think it's random. And that's kind of a shame. They should have used a hash. Once when you go through advanced CS, you'll learn to either love or hate hashes. They're very useful. But it's like, let's say, let's do a little Google search, JavaScript export. So we're going to look at the documentation on exports right quick. And you'll notice that we have a lot of different ways of doing this. So like export const, export default function, export name one as default, export all from all these little exports and stuff. So there's, I believe one of the ways that we could do it is something like, let's say const, say div is equal to and we'll just say we're black, background white, and then yeah, that's probably enough. I believe you can just do something like this and then put in div, or maybe it's something like this. It's been a little bit. I think you actually have to wrap something else. Let me see. We've got our default. So I know you can just do an export default on one of these. So like, yeah. I'll have to write a lot of exports. It's been a little while. Let's see here. See if I can find some more examples. I'm kind of skimming. Yeah, so they have default as. So export function 1, function 2 is actually the way that they usually will do it, but that won't have a default. So main and div. We shouldn't have an export default here. So I think I can put like that. Yeah, see, it doesn't like doing that. I'm just gonna do these as this because I'm gonna spend way too much time on exports, which
What is the difference of export and export default?
so export defaults. Like this is a non-default export here, so we're exporting more than one thing. The default export is when you have it where you don't have it in these curly braces here. Oops. But like I can put in a second one here instead of that. So a default, you can only have one default export. So like you might see